Hi guys. So today we'll be talking about a few things in fintech. My panel here is very diverse. I mean, they're all white guys, but working in tech, but it's fine. They work on the diverse technologies. I'm Jan Brezuk-Berk, I'm the editor of Netocratia. We obviously cover tech and so on. And to my left are a few interesting speakers who I'll leave to introduce themselves. So guys, what do you work on in fintech?
So, hi everybody. We're actually changing the way people discover, purchase, track, and resell products online and offline. So we could not take the whole package of solutions to put it together. So we'd start with the purchase. Today we're covering a bit more than 200 locations where people can actually pay with crypto. Our payment processor is exchanging crypto into fiat in 1 second and making an instant transaction to the merchant. So the merchant can actually accept crypto. And of course, we're adding to this bunch of other technologies. Like every time you buy something, if you take a photo of the receipt, we're actually reading the product you actually bought, and our AI is putting it into your inventory. So we can track your warranties next to it, and we're telling you what's the average price when you want to sell it further on, you know? So you can actually see what you own and what you bought. But there are a bunch of other stuff too, so please guys.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Interesting. Hi, I'm Luka Mak. I'm from Raiffeisen Bank. I work in the digital channels, so everything regarding web, mobile banking, internet banking. Yeah.
Cool.
Hi everyone. My name is Serjan. I'm with Cryptomat, and we make it super easy to buy cryptocurrencies and also store them in a secure digital wallet. So our mission is basically to bring crypto into every household, and to do that, the whole process needs to be really simple, and so we focus a lot on usability of our platform, so that truly anyone can get and acquire crypto and store it safely, and we do this at the best rates possible. So yeah, looking forward to this discussion.
Hi, my name is Stjepan. We are technology providers. We work for banks and increasingly for talking with fintechs. We have some new development regarding credit scoring, and yeah, let's start with this.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Maybe to start with an obvious question. PSD2 is around the corner, 2019 or 2009, as I talked about yesterday for some reason. So 2009 is around the corner, PSD2 with it. How much will that change the landscape for you? Will it be a mark for you, or will it just be another date and you're working as normal as possible? Luka, as far as banks go, I'm guessing that you're looking at that date and saying, okay, now we're opening up, yay.
Yeah, I mean, very interesting time, very interesting time to be in banking and fintechs in general. Everything's about open banking, blockchains, using these new technologies. Yeah, we will be looking to possibly find new business models from which we can grow and cooperate with other more experienced maybe fintechs, or use these new technologies regarding to increase the user experience. I mean, banks are known to be slow. Our legacy systems are complex, and new times have come, and we really need to step up our game. And we recognize fintechs as this kind of collaboration, these partners that can help us increase this this user experience, and they can help us be better.
Mm-hmm.
I find this to be absolutely amazing, and I don't know why it didn't happen before. I mean, of course, there's good reasons for that, and so. But imagine now with the open banking and the APIs that are going to be available to us, we're going to be able to build applications on top of that. We're going to be able to integrate our own services with the banking sector, which is something that we all believe is going to happen in the future. And so it's great that the banks are opening up, and I'm hoping to see to see good applications coming out of that, different types of applications, also different business models for the banks, and actually before it was so difficult to work with banks, right? Because traditionally,
come on.
well, from the technical aspect, you know what I mean. So it's difficult. It was at least maybe okay for us. It was difficult to integrate with banks. Now with the APIs, you're getting a standardized way to how to connect with them, and that fact alone, you know, is going to enable us to build apps on top of that infrastructure. Yeah, so it's great.
Yeah. In today's world, more or less everything that happens should be considered from perspective of three big centers of industry development technology, and it's United States, Europe, or China, or East Asia in more general. So in payments, now as economies become more and more cashless, what we use cards, and cards are Visa and MasterCard. So that's something that's very good for the America. PSD2 is a way for banks to try to enable customers to do direct payments everywhere, directly using their payments infrastructure, not going through Visa or MasterCard. And this is actually an initiative, that's why it's European directive. This is actually an initiative from European banks on how to try to take this, get on top of this market. So for sure, for PSD2 implementation and usage, there'll be huge push by the strongest and biggest European banks to have it come up and live. And of course, there will be a big challenge because it's always a huge challenge to replace a system that's already in place, functioning, everyone is happy with it. So that's the perspective on it.
Do you think that while you're all excited and you see the opportunities since you're working on it, do you think that customers recognize those opportunities? Or will it take time for also to either you educate them on, for example, how to use a new app or a new solution, or just understand blockchain or crypto? Or is it something they're also aching for and just will embrace?
Oh, if I may, like being user of many of mobile apps of local banks, I think users are eager to try new apps.
I know of a story. I was talking to a guy from Poland. They have like an online banking. They're kind of an online bank. They just have 1 or 2 physical locations, and so he was telling me that there's actually people who go to the ATM, collect the money from the older people, collect the money from the ATM, and then take it to the bank. You know, so because they're like, hey, what's the money? What's the money doing in the ATM? So, you know, they would do this. So, you know, with new technology coming up, you know, obviously you have people, you know, it takes time for them to get used to it. But the more value the technology brings and the more frictionless it is, and the more the experience becomes seamless and useful, then, you know, people will adopt that naturally, organically.
Well, I think we have to differentiate that we're talking about day-to-day banking now, and then we still have our core banking services, our core banking products like lending products, saving products. And yeah, people are more inclined to test out these day-to-day services maybe somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But still, when it comes to borrowing money, the bank has this reputation, the bank has the strength, and you have more, you know, security going to the bank and asking for a loan. When we're talking about day-to-day banking and these new players that are emerging and have already emerged, they are more focused on the user experience, and this is something that probably will change, and traditional banks will have to also find a way to battle this. But yeah, that's something.
I think in the end, PSD2 is gonna be as every day. Like it won't change anything big, but it's gonna be benefit for the user. I also think that the adoption of new applications or apps, or however you call it, it's more and more complex because there's a huge waterfall of different kind of apps. Many of the companies are doing similar stuff. So when my mom asked me, like, what do you do? I was like, you know, like, because it was very difficult for me to explain her how blockchain is working. So when we went through that point, I showed her how she can actually pay with crypto. And then when she started to understand that, she asked me what's Bitcoin, and I was like, come on. You know? So yeah, I think it's very important that we first bring technologies close to the people, explain them how they work. The technologies are becoming more and more complex, and you need more and more money actually to build these new technologies because staff and people who can do these technologies are more and more expensive. So when somebody asks me, how is it like to be a startup now? I'm saying it's harder than ever because you need so much more money to really, break the surface. So yeah, I think it's not so easy actually for the people to adopt to new technologies and to new apps. They love to try it, but they also like to delete it from the app.
Yeah, probably a lot of people downloaded Taxify today in Croatia since they're just open, but who is going to use it tomorrow, the next week, et cetera, et cetera? Are they going to get back to Uber or whatever? But you open an interesting question, the question of talent in fintech. How hard is to not just get senior people on board, but also get students interested? Is it easy for you because your cool fintechs are working on cool new technologies? And does new talent recognize this? Because as far as the students of engineering that I've talked to, especially while they're still studying, they don't get it yet. They're still kind of, they understand blockchain maybe, are interested in crypto, but not from a standpoint of, oh, I want to work in that. What's your experience?
When they don't know things, they will probably, the best ones will not even tell you they don't really know something, right? So it's really important that you have at least one or two guys in the company who are the trendsetters, who really understand the pain and how technology is working. And then these guys are indirectly educating the other guys to understand how blockchain works. And when they educate the others, it becomes fun. Mm-hmm. And then the developers starting to differentiate from each other. But it's really interesting. These developers are not older than 35 years because the technology is new. And in the end, money talks. So if you're going to pay a lot of money and throw it into their face, I'm sorry to say it like this, it means throwing into their education and really, have a respect to them and really push it forward with them, then you can actually make it happen. But don't expect that you're going to get a high-profile guy on the market that you can just take from a company or that he's waiting for your job. Not
that
possible.
time has passed.
How's it you guys?
Yeah, it's tough to find quality staff everywhere, with whichever industry. I mean, let's talk about AI guys. They're like in the hundreds, not in the tens of thousands. So it's always a challenge, but talent emerges every day, and you have to start somewhere. And I think this is quite a fun and challenging time to start getting into blockchain. We've heard guys being in blockchain from 2012, 2010, and I was in college still, so I never heard about it like then. But now, now it has traction, and then you have people to explain it to you and to learn from them, and that's something that students can get really excited about. Fintech's really interesting industry.
For us, we're a product company or a development company in a sense, because a lot of our staff is in engineering or somehow involved into our product. And so where we get our talent from is mainly from the same people that we've been working for the last 5+ years. So the team is like a football team that's been playing for a longer period of time. And so we tend to source our talent where it's somehow more affordable or cheaper, or where our money, can make a bigger impact. And so, as Dejan was saying, it is really difficult to compete in an environment where you have, companies doing, as you said, really cool stuff, and then you have companies also, putting a lot of money into that person. Still, I don't think money can buy everything, although it can buy a lot. It's still a lot about the relationships that you build, the culture in the company that you build. Seriously, it's not all about money. And so that's one thing, building a cool culture in your company, understanding the people you work with, educating them, and also working on programs or sponsoring programs where younger people or devs from other industries, are coming into the blockchain space. So for us, it's important to support those. But yeah, generally speaking, it's really a challenge also from the security perspective, right? Maybe this is a problem for you two guys, for Dan maybe, because we deal with, other people's assets, and you really need to build in mechanisms, that actually prevent this abuse coming even from your own developers, right? Who controls the controller? So yeah, in that aspect, for me personally, that's one of the biggest challenges, to find trustworthy people and, not just getting a developer in a company.
How do you know that someone's trustworthy, especially if they're new to the industry and you haven't worked for them for 5 years?
You don't. You don't put them in the let's say in the inner circle, or so to speak, or there's different in technology. There's different ways to give different permissions to different levels of developers, and I think like from the start, you need to have founders in the company and like the closer team in the company that you trust completely. If you don't have that, what do you have? I mean, how do you build a company if you don't have that inner trust? So yeah, it is a challenge.
Stjepan, you also work obviously as a consultant.
We
on the
are
business
kind
side.
of developers, and we get talent and do stuff for other people with them. I mean, there are developers. Obviously, there will be more and more of them because it's a very interesting career path. A lot of young people want to become developers. And then how we end up resolving the problem of lack of them, it will become a crucial strategic point of any business that, like now, how they consider their products and markets, they'll have to consider on how are we going to deal with this scarcity and resolve it. So in our company, like during the last year, we really kind of reinvented ourselves, the way we think about our HR, our development, our conferences that we go to. So we completely did huge overhaul of it. And for the next year, we plan to do even more in that. So that's like anything else in business, we need to be competitive and do stuff better than the others, and then we can have access to talent. Yeah.
Cool. Are there any questions from the audience by any chance? I don't want to leave questions for the end, so we don't. Okay, we do have a few questions at the back, if I can get a mic there. By any chance? And the mic is on its way. It's close, it's close. It's gonna be so, and here it comes. There we go. And please introduce yourself, if possible.
Hello, Mike. No, I'm Niels. I have a question regarding PSD2. Before coming here, I was having a look with a reflection group on how many banks are actually connected to those open banking APIs. I think, if I'm right, we have like 6,000 banks in Europe. Guess what? The most connected API has 40 banks. So that's nothing. If you want to
Which
have
banks? Sorry?
40 banks. There is the most connected open banking API has only 40 banks. The other ones I saw have 3, 5, 4 banks connected. So PSD2 is meant to open IBAN transfers, right, to make it easy. But I have the impression the banks are doing all to prevent that it's getting easy without connecting, which I understand because every fintech joker can now get into the bank account, withdraw the money, do transactions, and you, maybe Luca, as a bank, you're still liable. The liability is still with the bank.
Yes, of course. The infrastructure is still there. I mean, we have to be liable. But the thing with PSD2 is actually that we don't have to be so closed as we have been up till now. I mean, we have to give the opportunity for the user to choose. I mean, why not switch bank providers, not let's say bank where you keep your assets, but why not switch the applications from week to week? Why not use some sort of discounts that maybe other applications will be using? I mean, there's such a wide variety of ways that we can open up and maybe have certain collaboration between apps. I mean, it's an interesting time, and of course, we're not happy about it opening up. I mean, I personally am, but as a bank, as a representative, I have to say, no, we enjoy it to be closed up. But for the user, for you, for me, I mean, that's a great experience, and I'm happy where it's going. So, yeah.
Stepan, you wanted to chime
Yeah,
in?
in my opening statement about PSD2, I said, yeah, there is this big move from Europe, but it's not going to be easy, and this is exactly one of the strongest points of where it's going to be hard. So the PSD2 regulative kind of said what banks need to do, that they need to open their infrastructure to third parties, but they didn't say how. So the regulations didn't give any technical details. And what's happening is that everybody started seeing deadlines by which time they need to implement something, and they felt they need to start developing, and they ended up with different standards, different APIs. I don't believe this is strategic for European banks to try to make it harder for fintechs. I think it's a lack of coordination, or because in the huge community, who is the decision making, how to coordinate, we are under deadlines, so there is kind of non-organized approach to this. And this probably will be resolved with time. For example, one example how it could be resolved, that there would arise specialized companies that are kind of hubs that will be developing API for every bank, but then offer their own, and then the things will concentrate. So it will just take longer time, because it's actually a huge problem to get these 6,000 of banks doing something very complex with their diverse, that touches their diverse core systems simultaneously, at the same time, quickly. It's just very hard, yeah.
Don't worry, there will be documentation, so you'll be able to connect.
Cool. Thank you for the question. And we had one more, right? Or was it wrong? Was there one more question there, or no? Okay. As far as working together, so let's get back to PSD2. We're talking about it. How do you guys expect to work with each other? And maybe everyone now gangs up on Luca on how to work with banks. But then as far as connecting e-commerce and commerce in general through blockchain and so on, how do you look at working with banks specifically, or other fintechs?
Users still trust banks, you know. So you have to work with banks, and we have a good relationship. You know, the problem with the banking system is, 3 weeks ago I was a panelist in front of all the Slovenian banks, you know, and I was listening on how they think, and you know, the problem over there is that they're so regulated that they cannot go outside of their stream. So they need to stick to the regulations, and they cannot create like new, crazy, innovative business models. And I think that's a problem. So, and then you imagine like a crazy guy in yellow shoes comes and says, you know what, we can make transactions where actually they make money in a really fast and simple way. And in Venezuela today, people are using Bitcoin as a currency and not any more money, because they need a whole backpack to buy some chewy gums. And then I say, well, you know, in the future, blockchain will probably allow us to create digital banks on blockchain, and people will be able to transfer money even faster, and people can actually store, you know, the money somewhere, and they can actually get loans from somewhere, and they're like, what are you talking about? You know? So it's of course, like, keep in mind, we need to think about the users, and if users are using banks, and if they're trusting banks, and I think we need to work hand in hand. But of course, I can tell you and assure you that the future will be in digitalizing the banks, disrupting the banking system. And I'm very happy about it. But at the other side, one last thing. When I was trying to explain what blockchain is in Slovenian language, it was for me extremely difficult. So I went to Google and I started searching like blockchain in Slovenian. And I came to nlb.si, that's the National Bank of like Nova Ljubljanska Banka, and I was like, and they said like blockchain, and describing it in a perfect sense and how they can use it, and I was like, awesome. So I put it on and I wrote down, you know, in the bottom, NOV, and they actually like it. So I think they're going to blockchain, and that's very good. But they are still want to be centralized. That it's of course understandable, and we try to slowly shift it to decentralization.
I have a question. I know that in Slovenia, Slovenians like translating their digitized terms and use them far more than, for example, in Croatia. Is there a cool Slovenian term like localized for blockchain, or is it still blockchain?
It's blockchain.
Damn it.
Like we call it like veriženje blokov, right? So it's we even found a word for that. So, but it's all right. We're a small country with a small language, but we're very proud on it.
And you translate digital terms very well, sir. What do you think, Luca? Will it be easier to work with these fintechs then? And how will they work with you as a bank?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's hard to work with them. I mean, they don't seem very hard. I mean, very nice guys. But yeah.
At least on stage.
Yeah.
Come on, be honest. You know.
No, they suck.
No. Yeah, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, banks opening up, working with fintechs. I mean, what you said, that banks will still be banks, and that's where you'll keep your money, and you trust your bank, and you still trust. I'm hoping you will still trust your bank. And fintechs is just the part where they can come and bring you something innovative that we as a bank either don't want to do it first, or don't have the time or the resources or the experience. I mean, that's very important too. That's why fintechs are so strong, because they're experts at what they do. And that's where we can combine our power, you know, the banking power, the trust that you have. And if we say, yeah, we're trying something new with this company, come on, you know, try it out. I mean, you will probably believe your bank before than just some fintech that you've read their name, you know.
But there is one thing. I'm sorry. In Europe, over here where we live, we trust banks. But if you go to Middle East, Russia, or South America, or whatsoever, there the lack of trust is gonna, you know. So that's why we see potential. Well, where the economy is stable, when things are working, we trust the banks. My friend from Bosnia, he said, like, I can exactly tell you if the country is in a shit condition. And I was like, how do you know that? If you see a bank on every corner, there's something wrong, you know? It's a joke, by the way, but it makes some sense, you know? Sorry. Please.
You know what I see? You made some really good points there. Actually, both of you guys. I don't see a problem working with banks at all, once they understand what we do. And so there's been, you know, with people constantly, you know, confuse crypto with blockchain and, you know, speculative investment to blockchain technology. And so in this sense, you know, you had a lot of schemes happening, you know, in different countries, like during the ICO boom, and a lot of people lost money during that period. And then, you know, some of them started the blame game, you know, like the banks might be like involved somehow, they're, you know, responsible for this for some reason, but they're not. Once you are able to explain your project to a banking partner, you know, and once they understand what you do, and once they see you work, you know, according to the rules of conduct, let's say, or AML, then it's much easier to work with them. And I see banks being a natural, organic partner, you know, to us. Obviously, you know, the trust people have in the banks, the consumer base, the customer base. And so I'm hoping to work, you know, with banks in Croatia as well. I mean, at least at first, probably like at some, you know, lower level, you know, like basic level, and then as time passes, find different products, you know, we can work on together, like, you know, such as, you know, people won't be able to store their own digital assets. I mean, of course, some of them will, and, you know, but I see banks being able to offer different products of such nature, like storing your digital assets and other services that we, let's say, as fintech companies develop. And this, what needs to happen, like discussion like this needs to happen, and we need to understand what each of us does. I think the banks are going to be looking for additional revenue streams, and I think it's great for them to also explore what we do and see potential in that as well. And so, generally speaking, although let's say the myth is somehow banks don't like crypto, yeah, then it's not really completely true. Once depends where, also in geographically where you are. In Switzerland, it's completely it's much simpler, or in Luxembourg, or like in the Baltics, But in all these different regions, you can work with banks if you have a good relationship and they understand what you do. So,
do you think that traction in those markets where it's easier to work with banks will also help you convince banks or regulators, for example, in Croatia, to work with you?
I think it creates a precedence where banks and see how we work on a different market. They see a case, and it's easier for us to present this case, and they can then calculate their own risk and start working with us like faster and easier if they already have a showcase. So yeah, absolutely, it helps a lot. And the more banks get into this, let's say, the proper way, and like the more partnerships that happen in this field, the better it is for the consumer and for us as companies as well.
Stjepan, we talked before the panel about you working with banks also on their core products. So for example, credits, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you see the potential in some of those financial products as far as opening up to fintechs, enriching data?
Okay. It's part of cooperation with between banks and fintechs. I'll just relate on
Sure.
what we've been saying now. I mean, the cooperation is all over the board. It's really happening everywhere. Like one of the best known fintechs we have is Revolut. They offer kind of banking services, the payments, the account. But do you know who actually offers the account, for the example, for them in the United States? There is a bank, which is the most classical of all banks, like just a big traditional bank. It's called the Bancorp. Nobody more or less has heard of it because they're specialized in providing this under the cover, like white labor for the fintechs. They actually do also serve the Google Wallet. So that's like the biggest fintechs, and they do it with the biggest bank. All big bank Americas, they have their incubators, they buy fintechs, they invest, they make playgrounds, they do a lot of things. Even in here locally, in Zagrebačka banka, there is dedicated team for reviewing potential opportunities with fintechs, working with them. I think they reviewed over 100 fintechs in last 2 years. I was pitching to them once with some payment startup up, and the level of feedback that we got from the team, the way, like during that pitch meeting, they went down to how the systems would interconnect and some response times in milliseconds in their systems, and they were able on spot on the pitch to analyze whether the project is feasible or not on that technical level. So it was really good, and for sure they are considering a number of fintechs that are feasible to go to market with. So, and you asked about, yes, that maybe relates to something Luka said earlier about how actually still, we are now talking about payments, but how actually banks are still in position to provide loans, and they're the only ones. Well, the theory behind that says traditionally that banks are in that positions because they are the only ones who know how to do credit scoring, how to evaluate on whom to give a loan to or not, and that's the core of their business. But in that area, there have been huge developments recently also, because with the digitalized lifestyles, with all data that is available over the internet, it became more and more clear that there are some technological companies are in good or sometimes better position to also do that. We had already in 2014 or 15 the company Lending Club in the United States, which is peer-to-peer lending, not related to traditional banks. They went to IPO, and they were the biggest American IPO of that year with over $1 billion value. Now we have Ant Financials, which is a financial arm giving loans of Alibaba, which is online trader, and they use specifically the data they get on their clients through their trading platform of selling goods and services to do this valuation of how we can finance, who we can give loan to or not. They have, I think latest numbers are 200 million customers for loans. Okay, it's China, but even for China, it's very, very considerable market size. So they're kind of taking over, and this premise that the banks are the only ones who have enough data on people to be able to give loans in a quality way, it doesn't hold in this future world anymore.
Well, that's the part where we can also find how we can collaborate with fintechs. I mean, data enrichment, as I said. I mean, it's huge potential. We heard from Pedro before about AI, and seeing just your picture, the picture that the bank has, especially when he touched upon, you know only about the customers that you gave your loan to, but you don't know about the customers that didn't receive the loan. Maybe these were profitable customers, and that's something that we could work on in getting this, enriching our data, and also possibly enriching others' data, other people's data, other fintechs. So that's also a big part of the picture.
Cool. So we have a few minutes left. Are there any questions? So we don't.
Yeah, I have a question.
Ooh.
So like we were talking about fintechs working with the banks, right?
Mm.
So where does Revolut come from? Oh, honestly, where does it come from? Where was the company founded?
Do you want me to Google because
No,
I don't know from
I'm
top of
asking.
my head.
I think I'm saying like, why doesn't the next Revolut or like a fintech? Why doesn't it come from Croatia? Or why doesn't it come from these parts? Let's do something about this. Let's not just stand and wait while others are developing all these products, and then we're all about Revolut is great, N26 is great. Why don't we just change things here where we are? Why don't we do that?
So not just wait for the Amazon or Google of
what's up with
fintech
that?
to come to here. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're sitting at these conferences talking about how someone else is great. Let's be great here. So can we do that?
Make Croatia great again.
Oh God. And with that,
It's already kind of great. I would say.
from a startup point of view, then, what is the barrier? Is it money? Is it raising funds? So, for example, I was at a conference last week in Romania where there were a lot of investors, obviously. They were interested in different technologies, some in blockchain, not so much. Actually, a lot of them were not quite keen on it. Is it a problem to raise the money you need for talent to succeed on a global level, etc.? Is that what's holding us back? Is it something else?
4 years ago, I founded ABC Accelerator, and we came from Netherlands, where we actually got some funds. So we came to Slovenia, and we had one VC fund, and this VC fund was the biggest one in the region.
And it's still the biggest one in the region under a new
Probably
name.
not. I think it doesn't exist anymore. But the problem was, all right, so we started with the ABC Accelerator. We started to find the good startups, and we found many and really a lot of great people that have different kind of mindsets. It's not about the money. It's not about to get the money. Like, let me give you one really interesting part of this panel. So we could raise 10, 15 million from a VC, but we said we're going to do an ICO. And let me explain you why. The perspective of ICOs failing is actually the same in startup industry. 1 out of 10 startups will succeed. That's the data, but actually 1 out of 30 will succeed. In ICO segment, it's the same stuff. 1 out of 10, I also believe 1 out of 30. The amount of money that ICOs get is enormously bigger. Yes, it is, because if you want to build something really crazy, and all these ICOs are thinking about that, you need really great staff. Also, people don't understand, if you want to be listed on a big exchange, it will cost you $2, $3, $4 million. If you want to have your own currency, it costs money. So when it comes to startups and getting money, many times, you know, we as Balkans, we have one big problem. We are great visionaries, and many times we just put too much food on the plate. It's not the problem for me to eat the food. It's just like sometimes we really dream too big. And then we don't focus and segment, you know, all this stuff step by step, but we just try to change the whole world. I bet that Revolut was also not like thinking so big. They went step by step, moving it forward. And in the end, the founders were the guys who were searching for the money. When I'm in the Silicon Valley, and I'm a lot over there, I see just one differentiation between Croatia, Slovenia, Serbia, Bosnia, and the guys over there. It's the mindset. Like over here, as soon as we get 500K or $1 million, we're immediately a successful startup. You know, that's the biggest bullshit ever. In the Valley, they're successful even before they get the money. You know? And then when they get the money, they're even more stressed to try to be successful. And I believe if you're good, if you have a real problem to solve, if you have a great solution, good team, unique value proposition that it's extremely difficult to have, a great business model that can be really scalable, then you can actually make it. But if you want to have all these numbers, all these things, you need to be crazy or, you know, or really smart. So even we saw so many startups, we invested in so many of them, we failed already so many times. And I still wake up in the middle of the night asking myself, will this work? You know? So I think it's the same for you guys, you know, we're really breaking the ice over here. So it's like, if we make it happen, that's awesome, and be proud of yourself. I mean, look, you guys are doing something that it's totally new. So like, people will remember you because of that. Even if you fail, you didn't actually fail. It's just a step to be, you know, to come to that success.
Oh, that's so nice. You know, but no, but thank you. I mean, yeah, it's no, yeah. I was joking a little bit, but yeah, it's difficult in how to say on all aspects basically. But so what we do this because we love to do this. I personally want to do a change. I want some things to change. You know, I want to make my mark. So also, like, you've been a successful businessman previously. Also, I've done that as well. I've built successful companies before, and so this project is like really a challenge for us, and we're total newcomers into this, and like, so we're learning every day, and we're not, you know, afraid to say that. So it is what it is, and so but I really feel we've been successful all this time. We've, you know, managed to get users from all over the world. We focus mainly on EU, but like, we get people from 25 to 84 years of age, you know, registering to our platform, just, you know, buying Bitcoin or whatever, you know. I don't see that as our end goal. I see that as only the first step, you know, towards our end goal, you know, which is probably going to be some putting ourselves between the platforms, the blockchain-powered platforms, and the consumers. So we'll put ourselves somewhere in between to try to create seamless experiences, and that's somehow our mission. So me as let's say as an entrepreneur, I was always, how can I, you know, make some processes better than they already were? And so I saw a huge opportunity in crypto, you know, where people were mainly focusing on their own platform. I saw an opportunity, how can I help the masses, you know, use these wonderful platforms that are coming out of this? And so, yeah, it's difficult, like, from sourcing the talent to getting money, because end of the day you also don't want to get any sort of money. You want the smart money, but it's a path we're willing to take, and we're strong in this, and, you know, we're all in, and, you know, hope to see you in a couple of years and say, yeah, you know, that's the guy that was, you know, talking about Revolut, and now, you know, they've partnered up with, you know, and now they have a great business.
Well, hopefully in a year we'll be back at this panel having a lot of success, surviving PSD2. And Evolud will be talking about partnering with you guys. We're out of time, so thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, ask them later and find them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.